the highest fight IQ.
I don't think there's nobody in the game that has the fight IQ that I have.
Off the charts.
His fucking IQ.
The highest fight IQ maybe ever.
This guy hits hard. He's tough. He's this, he's that. And this guy has a dream. But my fight IQ will win this fight.
Fight IQ podcast. Today we are bringing you some breaking news and going over some rumors that could lead to some potentially pretty big fights. At this point, most of what we're really looking at is the first few months of fights for 2025, and I think so far it is shaping up to be a pretty good year. We wanted to start out with the one that probably has the most grounding as far as a rumor goes at the moment, and that is Dan Hooker versus Justin Gaethje, rumored to be on the UFC 313 card on March 8th.
Yeah,
that's a big one.
This one's going to be pretty sick. So far, the rumors have been like kind of surrounding this fight around like comment sections and then coaches posting it and stuff like that. We've seen a lot of rumors about Justin Gaethje and Dan Hooker talking about this date in particular, and it's the fight that makes the most sense as far as like entertainment value. It's going to be a real violent one, and if this is one of Justin Gaethje's last fights, it's a good one to go out on against Hooker. He's in the top 5, maybe top 6, and it's going to be an awesome fight to watch, honestly. I'm surprised they haven't fought yet, just because their styles are so just insane, and it's just one of those fights that's like, how hasn't this happened yet?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I thought about it when it first kind of was starting to show up on, the social media and all of that, and it was one of those where it was like, damn, for whatever reason in my brain, I thought this was going to be a rematch, and then it wasn't. And I think it's just because it's been one of those fights for the division that people have been wanting to see for so long because of the potential entertainment value of this fight. Dan Hooker is one of those guys that especially recently has been looking really, really good. The blonde hair, brutal tattoo Dan Hooker that we've got now is clearly a very different fighter than he was even a couple years ago when he fought Michael Chandler. It seems like he's really kind of trying to make a run for it, and it seems like he's had the most momentum that we've seen him with. And going up against Justin Gaethje, who unfortunately just lost to Max Holloway not that long ago, I think it's a good fight position-wise in the rankings for both of them, certainly here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this one could have implications for Dan Hooker, like maybe this puts him in a title eliminator. And who knows, off this win, Justin Gaethje could say, hey, man, I just had a great performance. Maybe I go in there and I fight the loser of like Oliveira versus Sarukian or something like that, and he wants to keep going based off this performance. I know that I would speculate that if Justin Gaethje loses this one, he's probably going to hang him up. Dan Hooker, on the other hand, I feel like he has a lot of momentum going on right now. His resurgence at lightweight is looking real good, and he has a really solid win over Mateusz Gamrot right now, so it's good implications for the division, and it's just going to start putting the next person in line up for after Sarukian fights Islam Makhachev.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one to see too, right? We have that card coming up, I believe, in January, so we'll have some answers as far as what the champ going into the 2025 year kind of looks like. And I think that'll kind of line out the next couple fights for what that rise to the belt might look like.
Absolutely.
For Dan Hooker. And really for anybody in the division kind of trying to make that run at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good matchups going on. We also have Renato Moicano versus Beneil Dariush up there. So it's just like there's almost like a little tournament going on. We have Paddy Pimblett without a fight, so maybe he's going to face the winner of one of these fights or something like that. Or we're still waiting to see who Dustin Poirier's opponent's going to be, and he says it's going to be his last one. Ilia Topuria is talking about moving up, so lightweight's going to be a really interesting division to keep an eye on in the next year.
Definitely. I think the next rumor on this one goes a little bit deeper and a little less clear, but also kind of started with some social media. It sounds like Poatan has maybe decided he's not going to fight Ankalaev next.
Yeah, so he's talking about headlining UFC 313, which is right in the middle of Ramadan, or right in the first week of Ramadan, I want to say. It's in March. And the rumor on the streets is what we're hearing is it might be Khamzat Chimaev. So Pereira already said it's not going to be Ankalaev, which is very interesting. That doesn't leave a lot of space, but he also seems very excited about this fight. And when you're thinking about really big names for Pereira to fight in a headline of a pay-per-view, there's not very many to choose from that aren't booked right now. Khamzat would be a wild card at light heavyweight, and it's a fight that's, they've talked about in the past, but we'll see if it ends up coming to fruition. I mean, the only other thing I can think of would be, John Jones or him moving up to heavyweight and fighting a heavyweight contender,
Yeah. But, yeah, and that's the interesting thing with this one is, I mean, beyond Ankalaev right now, there's a lot of rematches for Poatan in the light heavyweight division, right? We have Jiri versus Jamal Hill coming up, I believe, in January as well. Theoretically, I guess that's, okay, whoever would be next in line after Ankalaev maybe, or maybe there's another matchup that gets made in there. But, those are both rematches for Poatan. I don't know that he's necessarily looking to do another rematch before Ankalaev. If it's not going to be Ankalaev, yeah, I mean, I think we've got to consider the possibility that Khamzat would maybe go to 205, or are we thinking that Poatan would come down? I don't necessarily see that happening, but maybe.
I don't see Pereira moving down unless it's against like somebody like Dricus. That would be insane if he's like, yo, I'll cut all the way to 185 just to fight Khamzat, when Khamzat doesn't even like notoriously like making weight. So I feel like if he wants to fight Khamzat, having the size advantage would be the most ideal thing for him. And having him move up and putting the belt on the line would be a pretty ballsy move, considering that I would think that Khamzat's a way better grappler than Ankalaev is. He uses his grappling way better, so everybody that wants to talk shit on Pereira for not fighting Ankalaev, who's has a grappling base, it would really shut up everybody, because it'd be like, oh, he skipped over Ankalaev and just went straight to Khamzat. It's like, granted, it's a different weight class, but I mean, at the end of the day, Khamzat uses his grappling in a much more effective way than Ankalaev ever has.
Yeah, and that's been the concern that we've talked about with Ankalaev, is just like, he keeps saying that he wants to strike with Alex, and that's kind of an interesting choice to make when his clear advantage isn't necessarily down that road. So, it'll be interesting to kind of see what comes out with that. The John Jones rumor is kind of an interesting one as well, to have him go up to heavyweight. I was expecting, if that ever happened, that it wouldn't happen this quickly and that maybe it would be down the road. But maybe John has said that, hey, I got one more and then I'm going to go do acting or whatever it is that John Jones decides to do next. So maybe they're trying to rush that. Either way, it's still all rumor at the moment. We're going off of like a handful of tweets, and that's just about it to really kind of find what might be happening here. Next one up, we can say is confirmed at this point. It's going to be UFC Fight Night 253 at the Apex Center. That is going to be a main event and a number one contender fight, and it's going to be Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape for the flyweight title eliminator essentially fight here.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that they want Manel Kape to have work his way up to the title. Right now, he's probably the hottest prospect at flyweight after that last performance he had. And they're just going to see if he can keep that momentum going against Brandon Royval, who is pretty dangerous everywhere, but at the same time not dangerous at all. It seems like, he has a very light hand when it comes to striking and stuff like that, but at the same time he's very dangerous. He has very unorthodox techniques. But Manel Kape is going to be a very good style for him, I feel like. This is a good matchup at the end of the day for Manel Kape to get one more win before going up for that Pantoja rematch.
Yeah, definitely. And, Manel Kape being so much of a counter striker and utilizing that advantage over people that like pressure will be interesting to see against Royval, because clearly Royval is not a heavy hitter as much as he is a volume striker. His whole goal is to put as many shots on you as he can. And against somebody like Manel Kape, who we saw in his last fight, can very easily do the same thing. It's going to be stylistically interesting to see who's going to get the advantage in those striking exchanges when they're both trying to put on so much volume there. And then if the grappling becomes a contender or a point in this fight, because Royval does have pretty decent jiu-jitsu and we've seen him comfortable on the ground. I don't know that I've ever seen Manel Kape in a situation where he wanted to be in a grappling exchange.
No, it's always counter grappling from Manel Kape,
the
real sprawl and brawl type style. He's hard to hold down. But at the same time, that's not, if he's on his back, that's not where he wants to be. So I feel like he's going to have a lot of trouble having that same style where he wants to play on the outside, since Royval is so long, and he likes to follow up his boxing combinations with kicks. That's going to be real tough for Manel Kape to play at that range and like just use slick head movement to kind of be at the end of everything. So it's going to be a very stylistically interesting fight to watch. but we will see how it plays out, because it's going to have big title implications. The winner of this is probably fighting for the title next.
You would think, right? And I think that was the interesting part, is Royval clearly had a moment where he thought he was going to have the next title shot. But, having seen him fought Pantoja, twice at this point, it's tough to kind of keep the flyweight. Just the whole division is essentially rematches at this point. So maybe they're thinking Kai Kara-France versus Pantoja, and then this becomes the next person in line. I could see that being a little weird, seeing Kai maybe jump over a couple folks, but to be fair, he has been in that title contention space and has never been given the shot. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's what they're trying to do, and I wouldn't be mad at that either.
Yeah, they're probably going to give Kai Kara-France the title shot, because, like you said, he hasn't had one yet, and he is coming off a win. Yep. He seems to be one of those people that always gets to that point where he should be fighting for the title and then loses right before he's gets his fair comeuppance.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's just however the matchmakers want to put together everything, because lately flyweight hasn't made the most sense. We're bringing in Kaya Sakura, giving him a title shot immediately, stuff like that. But at the same time, Pantoja's just running over everybody. So maybe they even do the Figueiredo rematch if Figgy wants to move down. It's going to be interesting to see how they make up at the top for that division. It's a little congested at the moment. I think there's a lot of folks that could be, but there's a lot of folks that already have been, and now we're trying to kind of see where everybody ends up. Exactly.
Yeah. I think the last major point that we wanted to talk about was they did release what seems to be the final card for the Saudi Arabia fights on February 1st. The main event being Israel Adesanya versus Nasruddin Imavov. The co-main being Shara Bullet versus Michael Venom Page. Mm-hmm. Both great fights. I know that y'all have touched on these a little bit. I didn't get a chance to, which bummed me out, because MVP is one of my favorites, and recently I've been on the Shara train. So I think I end up a little sad regardless of how that one goes, but it'll be a fun fight. I hope we get to see some cool... I think what we hoped was maybe going to be the Wonder Boy MVP fight that never was, and it's obviously stylistically Shara is not Wonder Boy, and we can acknowledge that, but unorthodox, very interesting karate style strikers here, and obviously MVP being one of the most notable for that. Great fight. I mean, both of those are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm hype about those. Also announced was Sergey Pavlovich versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik, which just seems like a nice heavyweight feature fight. This is probably going to be one of those fights that either it ends in a very dramatic KO finish or it's very boring to watch for 3 rounds. Jairzinho does have that tendency to be a little bit more patient. Sergey coming off a loss to Volkov, we're going to see how he comes off back-to-back losses. He kind of got beat up in his last 2 fights, so this is kind of a tough one to come back against Jairzinho, but it's a winnable fight for him. I really like Sergey. He's one of those people that has crazy knockout power, but at the same time, he has a method to his madness. He's not the best boxer, but he has a way to deliver that skill set in a fight. He's going to get in on you. He has very long arms. He has his punches come from the weirdest angles because his arms are so long. And I feel like he's going to give a lot of people problems that can't deal with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I like Sergey Pavlovich. It's always been one of those guys that I think he's fun to watch. He has had a little bit of a rough go recently. I know his last fight out, though, he looked fucking massive. Just clearly been hitting the weights for all of his time off. So maybe he can keep that up, and maybe we can start kind of dialing back in the technique and the timing and all of that with his striking and stuff, and see if he can't get this done over Rozenstruik. Another one on here that was kind of interesting, it seems like it's confirmed, but we're not really sure yet, is Mateus Gamrot versus Fiziev. Another lightweight fight, another potentially very interesting fight. Not necessarily changing and shaking up the top 5 of the division, but giving us a couple cool contenders in that top 15 for sure.
Yeah, this is going to be a rematch if it's official. This would be the fight that Fiziev got injured on before his long layoff. He was, in my opinion, he was beating the shit out of Gamrot. He was defending all of his takedowns and just piecing him up on the feet, landing really big body kicks, landing really nice boxing combinations, and Gamrot really wasn't having very much success. And it was actually looking like Fiziev was, working towards a finish. and there was like this weird kick. He threw a really explosive kick, and I can't remember if it was when he went to like retract the kick and put the foot back down, or if it was the way Gamrot blocked it. But either way, his ACL, all of his knee pretty much exploded on that kick. So it pretty much had him sidelined for the last year and a half. And it's the return of Fiziev. If he's anything like he used to be coming back, then I feel like it's a possible fight for him to win. But if he's lost any of the steam coming off, because he was coming off a long layoff before that injury too. So ultimately, it could be like a Dominic Cruz situation where it's like he's just out for so long and then has to come back, and it's very shocking to see that he still has his skill set about him.
Yeah, we'll see. It's one of those things where it's tough to have a layoff and then get injured and then be laid off again. And now we're talking, inactivity, ring rust, and even just more so than that, I think there's a timing and a confidence thing that comes with taking that much time off, and especially having an injury in between there. So seeing if he can come back and kind of get to that old form would be really nice to see. He's always exciting to watch, especially when he's on. So hopefully we get to see that version of Fiziev again. Yeah,
and another thing too is having to fight at such a takedown heavy style coming off an ACL injury. Oh man, I never like that. It's like you're having to put a lot of weight on those knees. You're really going to stress test it at that point. So I really don't like when fighters come off a really horrendous knee injury and then they come back against a super strong grappler that's going to chain wrestle you, that's going to have you up on one leg bouncing around. It's going to be an uphill battle for Fiziev. But at the end of the day, I think, he has the skill set to beat Gamrot, and he's going to have that confidence. He was like, I was beating the shit out of you before my knee blew up. So hopefully he's able to get it done, because I like Fiziev at the top.
Yeah, I do as well. Last one on here that I just wanted to bring up, because I thought it was kind of an interesting fight to be thrown on here, is the return of Terence McKinney. Terence McKinney is fighting in the prelims. I didn't recognize his opponent, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but glad to see him back. I feel like it's been a little bit since he's fought. He was always exciting to watch. Another cool prospect for that lightweight division. Never made a ton of success there, but definitely has had his moments, and I would like to see him again for sure.
Yeah, he was. Terence McKinney was really hot prospect up until I think it was Drew Dober that he fought. He made it all the way up to Drew Dober, getting these really insane highlight reel KOs. Really quickly into his fights. He's a glass cannon fighter at the end of the day. He's going to come forward and he's going to throw massive damage at you, but the sacrifice of that is he's very open to getting hit with certain things. And he has a really strong wrestling base that he can rely on sometimes. So it's just interesting to see what he's done with that time off. He just signed another big UFC contract. He's a young kid. And I think he has some very good potential in his UFC future. It just depends on how he decides to sharpen up his game.
Yeah, absolutely. Overall, really great card. February 1st, that's the Saudi Arabia card. It's going to be a fun one for sure. I hope they can kind of confirm everything here and make sure that we are getting the full card that's been announced. But either way, I feel like they always put on good cards every time they've got to go back to Riyadh. So to have another one there and to get to see some of these fighters that maybe we don't see otherwise, just because there are a few of them that tend not to fight outside of the Saudi Arabia area, it'll be cool to kind of see if there's been any progress on that side of the world. And I think certainly when it comes to some of these guys, they're going to be making some big jumps in competition.
Heck yeah, man. It's interesting to see how the rest of the year gets matched up, but so far we're off to a great start with some really awesome fights, some really awesome potential fights, and we'll be here to break down any news if anything gets announced.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for watching. This has been another episode of the Fight IQ podcast, going over some news and rumors. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, tell us if you have any fights that you're interested in seeing. Maybe you have an idea of who Poatan's going to fight next that we didn't mention. We'd love to hear it down below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Peace.
Peace.